see me come and make some room.
Everywhere I go, I'm in the spotlight. This is a good life. I'm living bold. This is what it looks.
So one of the people that I've really been in awe of is Nina Vaca, and it would take me an hour to tell you the dynamic things this woman has done. I would like to really get into things that are really very relevant going on in our world today and her trajectory right now. So I'd just like to very, very succinctly go into how you began with your company, Pinnacle, please.
Well, before I answer your question, I do want to take a moment and thank Mirela for the kind invitation to be here today. And my dear friend Marianne, we're friends, and so the invitation to be around women and friends was just too much to give up. So I'd like to thank you for the kind invitation. It's very clear to me that Mirela has spent decades building a platform, decades building relationships, and she's here to share them with you and with us. So I'd like to thank her. I am here for one reason alone. You cannot be what you cannot see. You cannot be what you cannot see. My personal purpose in life, it took me a very long time to figure it out, but my personal purpose is connecting people with opportunity. And I've come a long way. I started my business 29 years ago when I was 25 years old. Some of you will be doing the math. From my apartment living room floor. And it's taken 29 years, almost an entire generation, to become one of the largest workforce solutions companies in North America, with a footprint in over 25 countries. And along the way, I remember what it was like to be small. I remember what it was like to start off. I remember the challenges that I had to go through. And so that's why I'm here today, is to share some of them with you and to recognize that you cannot be what you cannot see, and to share maybe some learnings that I had along the way. I'm really here for you. Anything that you want to ask me about the business, anything you want to ask me about my person, I'm happy to share, because I find that with women in ecosystems, sharing is a big part of how we connect, and I'm here for you. So thank you.
One of the really profound things that I don't think a lot of people know is how you began and where they see who you are now. And one of the things that is extraordinary to me is that your journey began with a tragedy, and and I'm going to say this again succinctly because we have a limited amount of time. Nina witnessed the fact that saw her father being killed for the carbon receipts. And instead of just stopping there and mourning, which is what a lot of us would do, she asked herself, how could she prevent this from happening again? And she turned that into her pursuit with computers and technology. And now she has a company that spans around the world. And tell them how much it's worth.
Well, what it's worth is really not relevant. I really want to focus, I'm happy to tell you more about that, but I want to focus more on the story, because Mirela said something really important. I've been watching for the last 2 hours. She talks about the mindset, and I really believe that. Yesterday at the Unicorn Summit, we talked about personal responsibility. At a very young age, let me back up. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mother and father are from Quito, Ecuador, South America. I'm a third generation entrepreneur, so my grandfather ran a business in Ecuador. My mother and father left Ecuador, immigrated to the United States, and started a business. And I started a business, as an immigrant, started a business in the United States. And so you could argue that I didn't know any better. All I've seen in my entire life was entrepreneurs. All I had witnessed was perseverance, moving forward, faith, family, work hard, hard work. And so I took those pillars, but at 17, nobody could have, I could have never imagined in my life that my father's life would be taken. And so I started running businesses at 17, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. But what Marianne is trying to point out is when our circumstances define us, we are not in our best self. And that's when personal responsibility is really important, because even in our hardest moments, I do believe you could find your inner strength. And I had a major decision to make at 17. Should I become a victim of my circumstances? Should I wallow and turn to drugs? Should I just take a different route? Or do I take personal responsibility and make a commitment to myself and to my family to move forward in the world? And that's exactly what I did. I am the first to get a college education in my family. I begged my mother to go to college. Having a college degree is the very beginning of the next version of my life. And so I decided to not let my personal circumstances define me, but to take charge of my life and to let me define me.
I think that is so powerful, and the reason why I wanted to hone in on that is that I don't know what everybody in this audience has seen. Most of us have experienced tragedy. Most of us experienced heartbreak. Most of us seen something that we think is absolutely insurmountable, and it hits you in your gut. And it's one thing to try and recover from it, to walk in a daze from it, but it's a whole other thing to take your tragedy and turn it into a source of strength that's propelled you. And Nina now has advised the White House, she's gone around the world and advised other people. And the reason why her voice is so highly valued is because she's made that journey. But I wanted to mention that because I know that when a lot of women in this room are beginning their journeys, where you are seems unbelievable, just out of reach. How does someone get up there? And yet to know that you began in a situation that can in some respects be harder than what some other people might have, and you've made that journey, is so empowering and so powerful. Please.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I am very steadfast about not letting our circumstances define us and taking personal responsibility for our lives. I do believe that we have everything we need to be successful. I've been listening closely, and you see a lot of coaches. A lot of it is inside us, and we need an unlocker. And so I'm glad you mentioned, I did get a chance to work and travel on behalf of the White House to 5 different continents, speaking to women entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, and it was one of the most beautiful years I had from 2014 to 2016. I went to Ghana, Africa, Amman, Jordan, I went to Vietnam, I went to so many different places speaking to women-owned businesses, and one thing was very clear to me. Women start businesses not for the money. They do it for the family. Oftentimes, women start businesses to feed their family. And in fact, in the United States, women of color are starting the most businesses. They run 7 out of 10 companies in the United States. So women do not have a challenge starting businesses. The real challenge is scaling the business. And where goes the CEO, where goes the founder, goes the business. So it's really critical for us to reflect on our abilities and our purpose, and reflect on our leadership and learn from others who have been there. I think that is critical, because where you go and your mindset goes, there goes your company.
Exactly. And one of the things I want to hone in on, because we have you with us, a lot of people talk about that first hump of beginning, of launching. But there is another hump that is not often spoken about. And that is, say you make it and you have a 6-figure business. There's a difference between the Steve Jobs and people that get to the 6 figures. And that hump is sometimes even more steeper. That has, that's kind of having a fortress around it, and you have to battle your way up that hump. And that is one of the things that you were able to get through, and especially in technology, as a technology-based company. And I'd love for you to briefly say what Pinnacle is, because women in STEM is still a rarity, unfortunately.
Sure. Well, we're in the technology space. Pinnacle provides IT labor to some of the largest companies in the world, in the tech space, in the financial services space, and even in the utility space in the United States. But we provide IT labor or manage IT labor on behalf of the company. And the reason why I shied away from talking about revenues and spend under management is because most people, I have learned in life that it doesn't really matter. The top line doesn't matter. The bottom line is what matters, right? Are you running a profitable company? Because if not, it's a hobby, it's not a business. Are you running an enduring, growing, profitable business? And so, starting off, I want to go back because I want to connect it to what Mirela is doing here. When I started the business, I had just moved to Dallas. I only knew one person. I knew one person in Dallas. So how on earth is a 5-foot Ecuadorian going to start a business when in a city where she knows absolutely no one and become a success? How on earth do you do that? I needed a platform. I needed a platform. Mirela talked about this yesterday. I needed a platform. Global Women is a beautiful platform that you could bring and leverage to your personal success. She spent decades building credibility in the marketplace, and now you can take it to the next level. So I started joining women's groups. Local groups, people that looked like me. I started really going outside of the business and working on the business, not just in the business. When you're smaller, you're working in the business. You're everything. You're wearing all hats. Chief cook, bottle washer, sales, marketing, HR, you're everything, right? Raise your hand if that's how, absolutely, that's how you start. You're working in the business. As you mature, as Marianne said, as you evolve, you spend more time working on the business than in the business. The number of times I ask women, what are you looking to do? What is your revenue? Why do you want to grow to that revenue? And then how are you going to get there? Do you have a yearly plan? Because we overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, and we underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. Let me say that one more time. We overestimate what we can do in a year, and then we get disappointed when it doesn't happen. But we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And so I want to invite you to think about your business in multi-years, in 5 years, in 10 years. For me, it's almost my 3rd decade of running a business. And so it was really important to understand that your mindset has to shift at every business cycle.
And one of the key things that you've done, and I know this is one of the challenges people also don't talk about, is in creating teams, giving the baby that you've worked so hard on and trusting team members to each have their part so that you can grow and extend. You know, what gave you the strength and the courage to entrust parts of what you've spent so much time working on so that it could grow?
That's a great question. Ladies, it is really about our ego. When you think about it, some of the smartest people surround themselves by people that are smarter than them. If we want to become the smartest person in our company, then the company will only grow to your personal intellect. I have learned to be more outcome focused than me focused. That's step number 1. Surround yourself by operators. Not every entrepreneur is an operator. Entrepreneurs tend to be visionaries. They tend to start. They tend to take it from the infancy. But once you leave the infancy business and you're in the go-go phase, and then you're after the go-go phase, these are different business cycles. After the go-go phase, you're an adolescent. When you're an adolescent, you need administrators, operators, different level of people. And so to have the foresight and to be outcome focused versus ego focused, there are 32 million small businesses in the United States of America. 32 million small businesses in the United States of America, according to Isabella Guzman, our former SBA administrator. Less than 3,000 of them make it to the Russell 3000. Think about that. So I have met so many small businesses that refuse to grow because the entrepreneur refuses to grow. Let me say that again. I've met so many businesses who refuse to grow because the entrepreneur, the founder, refuses to grow. And so what we're talking about here, focusing on ourselves, our mindset, surrounding ourselves with people that know more than we do, this is, while it sounds trivial, it's actually a big unlocker.
Absolutely. And one of the key things that we were talking about earlier also, and I think we can't emphasize this enough, both as minorities and as women, those demographics often suffer under the misguided idea, there's room for only one of us at the top. And meanwhile, I know growing up in a very international corporate family, when I saw the old boy network actually in process, if a man couldn't get something, the opportunities weren't lining up for him because he was busy here, but this is now on the table, he would turn to his friend and say, hey, let me toss it to you. Right. And it wasn't hoarding it, he wasn't hiding it, because he knew if he uplifted his friend, then his whole community, the circle around him, would get stronger. And when his circle got stronger, his own influence got stronger. And that's how men work. I saw this visual of, in a movie somewhere where people had to go up a tall well, and they ended up having to put their backs against each other, put their feet against the wall, and that pressure they got out of the well. But if one person in that process had said, only me, none of them would have gotten out of that well. And that visual strikes me as very strong. And I know that now, not only were you one of the advisors for the White House, you were recognized as the leading, not female, the leading minority business owner in the United States. Not means she beat out the men. And the only reason I was asking you to share what your company's valued, and you don't have to do that now, but it's only because I want people to think, if you could imagine yourself as a 17-year-old girl dealing with all the hormones, all the uncertainty, everything that's coming at you, and then the strength of your family and an individual is suddenly yanked away from you, and looking at that, what would you tell her now that you have become an incredibly empowered woman that men actually listen to? What would you tell your 17-year-old self?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. What would I say to my 17-year-old self? My grandmother used to say to me in Spanish, "Aprenda a vivir sola," and it translates to learn how to live on your own. And when she said that to me growing up, I thought, oh, I'm never going to get married. And what she was teaching me is to be an independent woman, to be self-confident, self-made. I know I'm not self-made. I'm part of a legacy my parents had to sacrifice to give me the platform I have. So what I would say to her, perhaps, is in order for anybody else to believe in you, you have to believe in yourself. And that's very difficult to do at a very young age because you don't have the track record, you don't have the years, you don't have the experience. But there is a difference between not having resources and not being resourceful. A lot of small businesses start without resources. You don't have money, you don't have capital, you don't have access to people, but you can be resourceful. How do we be resourceful? Ecosystems like this. Ecosystems like this. Leverage the ecosystem. Leverage the talents and the network of other people. Leverage those. And the way to be successful in these ecosystems, at least it's my experience, is you make a lot of deposits in the bank of relationships. You help others without expecting anything in return. And you'll start to build a brand for yourself. Of not being, we can't walk around like a hammer looking for nails, business, 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 business. Because people can be a business prospect or they can be a friend. And a friend can help you go so far. I was literally having yogurt out there and I met two incredible women that can help me in my personal life. I met Julia, who's in the diamond business, and my son is thinking about getting engaged. What a perfect connection. And then I met this other incredible woman who leads a manufacturing company, a modified manufacturing company for furniture, modular furniture. My daughter's moving to New York in October. Like, what a perfect solution. Not everybody is a customer, but everybody can be a friend. And a friend can connect you, can nominate you for an award, can connect you to another person. I am here because of a friend. And so I want to encourage you and invite you that if you choose to be part of an ecosystem, you have a responsibility. And that responsibility is to show up and to give your special superpower to others. And then you'll see that the more you give into an ecosystem, the more you get out.
That's absolutely true. I know that we have limited time, so I don't want to leave without asking this question. I'd love for you, because we talked about this before. But that's about audacity. And one of the reasons why I say that is that I know, walking in the circles that we both are in, one thing that you see men do, maybe they know 10% of whatever it is they're trying to pitch and go after. And they will come up there and they will hold their own and they will own their space and they will just go out and say, I'm the man you want and I can do this, and they'll tell you that little blip they know and they sound all-knowing. Now if you ask them 3 questions, you're going to realize it's pretty shallow. But they make that presentation and have the guts to do it. And I've met women and they know 100%. Yeah. And they come and they take up the smallest amount of space and they start to, and you go, oh my, well, who are you going to hire? So I think that a lot of times, women look for permission, and I can't say that enough. Do not look for permission. Be audacious, go after it. And if you only know 30%, guess what? You probably know more than a lot of the men who are also in line. So, one of the things that, I find is that women like yourself that have achieved so much, you, especially in STEM, you've had to go head to head to head with a lot of men with that mentality, and you've managed to make room for yourself at the table. And about 10 years ago, you told me how you were trying to go from one level, just another really big one, and how hard it was, because at that level, the Steve Jobs in the world, they had their whole network to help them get up there. And it was a lot harder for women, but you stuck with it, and now you have extended, and the things that you're doing in India, and it's mind-blowing. I'd love for you to share with them what gives you the drive to be audacious and to not be in a seeking permission, or to give yourself permission to go after the visions that you have.
Gosh, these are just great questions. You call it audacity, which we can. I call it courage. It's that same, what gives us the courage to be the only in the room, the youngest in the room, the new in the room. And it all comes back to what we were talking about this morning, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I have really mastered being uncomfortable. I look to punch above my weight class. I look to be in rooms where I'm the weakest. I seek it. I want it. I don't have to be the big dog in the room. It all boils down to our ego. And we have to practice this. We talked about yesterday in the Unicorn Summit about consistency. And the word practice is something I do a lot. I'm a triathlete. I like to swim, bike, and run in the same hour. And that is how I practice my courage. The courage to throw myself in the Pacific Ocean. I've swam Alcatraz. The courage to swim. The courage to be in the water with people kicking you and elbowing you. It's no different than business, by the way, right? You're in the water. People are elbowing you, pushing you, kicking you. How on earth do you get comfortable in that environment? I practice. I practice. I practice being uncomfortable. I'm training for an Ironman in September. I swim with the Aquatic Masters, the best swimmers in Dallas, and I swim in the slow lane. I swim in the slow lane, and on any given day, I'll have someone 10, 20 years my senior pass me. And that's okay, because I'm in the water. I'm there. And so I force myself to practice in my everyday life being uncomfortable. I force myself to punch above my weight class. And in the water, by the way, when people are kicking and pushing, the only way to survive is to put your head down and keep moving. People panic, they're flailing. I don't panic. I'm in the boardroom or in the business room, nothing will panic me. I feel like girls react, but women respond. I respond. I have patience. I don't get crazy. I breathe, but I practice it. So I want to invite you ladies to use whatever, you don't have to become a triathlete, you can if you want, I think it's amazing, but use some level of practice where you practice being uncomfortable, because if you don't practice it, you'll never master it. We'll become dabblers. Dabblers are people that go in and out. You do it, then you don't do it. Consistency. We talked about that yesterday at the Unicorn Summit. Consistency is key. Almost every question you can ask me, the answer will be discipline and consistency. Discipline and consistency. Where are you lacking the discipline and the consistency in your business and in your life? to get to your next level?
You know, something I'd like to emphasize, you know, while you're hearing from someone who's created a multinational corporation that's worth, you know, millions of dollars, you know, that's been advising the White House, and she's talking about all this, it can be intimidating. But what I would like to emphasize to everyone here is it takes just as much work to go after a small dream as a big dream. You have the same 24 hours, the 7 days a week. You know, it is your mentality. Now, there have been times when I've gone after something absolutely insane, and I've gotten it because I didn't know better. I didn't know there were a lot of people who said it couldn't happen. I helped negotiate the first treaty in 300 years between Hopi and Navajo, and I didn't know the first 3 people who had tried to do that had all been shot or run off the road. I was completely ignorant, and it happened. These things are possible for you to go after, and as you say, punch above your own weight. And the big, big key that I would love everyone to leave here with, when you hear someone like Nina, is really ask yourself, you know, what is intimidating you, what's holding you back, and why not dream big? Because you have that same network. Every woman that's made it to her level started where you are, or even underneath. So you go after that dream. It is absolutely possible.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for taking the time to
Flying free, skies are blue. Pull the weeds and make some room. I got soul coming through. Won't stop feeling the feeling on top of the world. Catwalk to the beat when you see me come and make some room.